Buenos días, ¿qué onda Twitch? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Empezamos hoy, 7 de enero. Melteo, que en mi canal. Hoy lo que vamos a hacer, vamos a ver un poquito de videos antes de empezar. Hay unos videos que se me antoja de ver. Antes de empezar con el día, a ver, el cuadro acá atrás. ¿Y cómo están? Pues estoy muy bien aquí con la gatita. Ando haciendo... Quiere cariño. Quiere un chingo de cariño. Esperando lo que van a dar como noticias. El POE. Esto lo tengo al lado. Listo. Pues... listo. Ahora lo vamos a abrir de esta manera. De todas maneras parece que... era eso. ¿Qué pasó? Hubo como un sonido bien grande arriba. ¿Qué pasó? A ver este video. 10 cosas que no
Public
sabes
figures like this don't come around
sobre
too often.
Mr. Rogers.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com,
Hay
and today
subtítulos.
we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things to know about Mr. Rogers. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this
Yo no
list, we're
necesito,
looking at a
pero-
variety of fun, little-known facts about this late great icon of children's television, which are sure to make you love him even more. Number 10. He got into television because he was unimpressed with it. You'd think that anybody who stars in a television show for decades would have a great love for the medium. But as Mr. Rogers once explained, quote, "When I first saw children's television, I thought it was perfectly horrible."
Since we're together, might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor?
So how did he wind up becoming a
Estaba
shining
viendo
light of children's
madres
television?
de él
Well, rather than
ahorita en la mañana. Llegué uno de sus madres que dijo, me llegó a mi mano esta mañana. Y me dije, vamos a ir a ver unos videos sobre él. Se me antoja.
simply complain about the object of his disdain, he decided to do something about it. As he put it to CNN, quote, "I went into television because I hated it so, and I thought there's some way of using this fabulous instrument to nurture those who would watch and listen." And he did just that. Number
Ay, tengo
9.
unas
He
madres
was
aquí en
an
los dos.
ordained minister. Life could have played out very differently for Fred Rogers. In 1963, he graduated from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary and became an ordained minister
Estoy
within the
checando
United
enseguida.
Presbyterian
Quedan
Church.
18 minutos.
The next logical step would have been for him to begin preaching, but he'd been working in television since the early 1950s, and so even after he was ordained, he continued along the career path he'd started, having already begun to hone his craft in children's television on the award-winning WQED public television series, The Children's Corner.
No sé si
Though he never wound up
Mocho
leading a
tiene
congregation,
en español.
with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood,
Creo
he
que sí,
found
tiene
a
un
flock of his
brasiliano.
own, one that spanned
No sé por qué no.
generations. Number 8. He was equally loved by animals. They say animals make great judges of character, and the way our friends in the animal kingdom responded to Fred Rogers' calm, welcoming, and gentle demeanor certainly supports that claim.
Would you like something to eat, Blackberry?
Perhaps his most famous non-human fan was
El
Coco
gorila.
the gorilla, who was reportedly an avid viewer of his
Conozco
program.
muchas cosas
In
porque
1998,
he visto
Coco
mucho,
actually
me encanta
appeared on an
este señor.
episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as part of a series about looking beyond superficial differences and facing our fears.
What does this mean?
Just as a greeting to see what you've maybe been eating.
Coco was thrilled to see Mr. Rogers and didn't hide her affection. And as a committed lover of animals, Mr. Rogers was also a vegetarian. Number 7. he was the victim of bullying as a child. Though it might surprise you given his famously slim frame, Mr. Rogers was actually chubby when he was young, and this apparently made him the butt of jokes in his own real-life neighborhood growing up. Similarly surprising, considering his career in television as an adult, he was also reportedly very shy, which only exacerbated the bullying. His peers were allegedly so merciless that according to Mr. Rogers and Me director Benjamin Wagner, young Fred Rogers would cry when he was alone. This was clearly a formative experience for Rogers, who, rather than become embittered, channeled his feelings into positivity and learned to look beyond the surface of others.
But it's you I like, the way you are right now.
Talk about an inspiration. Number 6, he did one TV guest spot as
Inspiración
a
por
fictional
todo.
character.
No vemos nada.
Mr.
pues.
Rogers was best known for appearing on his own eponymous
Okay.
television series, but he also had a habit of occasionally venturing into other televised neighborhoods and series. Thing
Sesame
is, no
Street.
matter where he went, he was always the same old soft-spoken, loving, and compassionate Fred Rogers, be it on Sesame Street or when you encountered him in person.
Oh my goodness, that was meant by Mr. Rogers!
There was one notable exception, however. In 1996, he played a character other than himself on Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. He played a reverend who, in a very unneighborly fashion, risks his church for reasons of vanity.
What's going on here?
Number 5, he wore sneakers for production reasons. Mr. Rogers' fashion sense is a big part of his image and legacy, and we'll be talking more about that later. But right now, we want to talk about those sweet kicks. Considering his old-timey attire, the sneakers always seemed like an interesting outlier, and people could not help but fixate on them, especially since he was always tying and untying them. So why sneakers as opposed to a more conventional and outfit-appropriate pair of dress shoes? It's simple, really. Fred Rogers thought work shoes or dress shoes were too loud for the quiet space he was creating and working in. Number 4, he wrote all the music for the show.
Para no estresar a la gente. Qué chingón
A
era
big
para
part
pensar
of
las
Mr. Rogers'
cosas.
neighborhood was the soothing music being played in the background. Though it was no secret that Fred Rogers played piano, what not everyone realizes is just what a talented musician
Es uno
he
de
really
mis héroes.
was. He first began playing
Es el que me
piano at the
encanta. Me
tender age
encanta
of
su manera de
5
pensar.
and would go on to earn a Bachelor of Arts in Music Composition. He actually got his start in
Esa
television
sí que
working
la
on
manera.
such musical
es
programs as Your
Que digo
Hit
las
Parade.
cosas, la manera.
He used this passion for music and
gente
composition
no
to
entiende,
personally
pero-
write, with only a few exceptions, all of the music on his show.
When you wake up
Veo que algunos
ready
sí.
to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day.
Number 3, he reportedly responded to
Snappy
all
day.
his fan mail. Considering just how many lives Mr. Rogers affected with his television series over the decades, you can imagine that he likely received a whole lot of letters.
There are many ways to say I love you.
Most celebrities simply don't have the time to respond to
Many
their
ways
fans,
to say I love
while
you.
others have a stock response that
Many
goes out to make
ways.
fans feel like they've at least been acknowledged. But not Mr. Rogers. As part of his daily routine, he allegedly sat down and wrote thoughtful, considerate responses to every single piece of mail he received.
And he opens his arms and he's like, "It's great to see you again, neighbor." And he just gives me this big hug, and
Though Fred Rogers is no longer with us, the countless letters out there must be a great comfort to fans, and an enduring reminder that he truly cared.
I like to take care of you. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So,
Number 2, his mom knit all of his sweaters. Though the sneakers were a big part of his image, the sweaters worn by
Nice.
Mr. Rogers in every episode are
Homemade.
truly iconic. Arguably on par with his catchphrase, "Won't you be my neighbor?" Just taken at face value, these cozy sweaters are adorable and endlessly endearing. But when you add to that the fact that they were reportedly made by
Oh.
his mom, well, doesn't your heart just melt?
mhm.
As he once explained in an interview, until the time of her death, Roger's mother would knit and send sweaters to friends and family every Christmas, and those are the ones he wore.
You know, when I put on one of these
Tengo
sweaters,
ropa así.
it helps me to think about my mother.
Number 1, he helped
es
to
mi hermano
save
que me lo dio.
public television. In 1969, Mr. Rogers appeared before Congress to speak out against proposed budget cuts to funding for public broadcasting.
One of the first things that a child learns
in a healthy family is
Me
trust.
encanta ese,
He
lo
gave
que,
an
lo que
impassioned
dijo
speech
eso
about the
ahí.
virtues of public
Es lo que estaba
television,
viendo esta
painting
mañana.
a vivid picture for skeptical politicians
Ese
that
video.
made it incredibly hard for them to deny its importance.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
The end result was that, just 2 years later, the budget increased by $11 million. That's not the only public cause Rogers championed, however. He similarly came to the defense of home VCRs and the home recording of programs in 1979. Why? Because he felt that people should have the opportunity to watch quality programming whenever they could find the time to do it as a family. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and
Qué
ring the bell to be
chingonera.
notified about our latest videos.
Qué chingonera. Sí, ya
This
lo había
video was
visto,
made in
pero...
partnership with Nuvi, who are just as obsessed with movies as we are.
It's a
A ver,
beautiful
voy a ir a
day
buscar
in this
café.
neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
Can a person really be this kind and genuine? Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things a beautiful day in the neighborhood got factually right.
Tom Juneau wrote one of the most beautiful articles you could read for Esquire magazine.
Quería ver
about
si
Mr.
había
Rogers.
un Watch
For this list,
Mojo en
we're taking a
español.
look at the details in this biographical drama that remained true to the lives of both Fred Rogers and Tom Juneau, the journalist who wrote the Esquire article it's based on, Can You Say Hero? There is a minor spoiler alert in effect here.
That was wonderful.
Number 10. Mr. Rogers took pictures to document his life.
That's Mr. Rogers there in the
On the left.
A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood depicts
On
Fred
the
Rogers
left.
as someone who's always
Como
living
si
in the now,
necesitábamos
taking
saber.
pictures to immortalize certain moments and people. The Esquire journalist who's sent to interview Rogers, referred to as Lloyd Vogel in the film, is caught off guard when Fred wants a snapshot of him. According to the original article, Rogers really did break out a camera and ask if he could take the writer's picture. Rogers reportedly said, quote, "I'd like to take your picture. I like to take pictures of all my new friends so that I can show them to Joanne." Documentary filmmaker Benjamin Wagner claims that Rogers preferred taking pictures rather than being photographed himself, another detail this movie gets down.
Me
Number
pasa a mí
9.
también.
Fred and the journalist remained in
No me gusta
contact.
que me
Seeing
fotografíen,
Tom
pero me
playing
encanta fotografiar a
Fred
la gente.
is moving.
It is so
Tengo un
nice to
chingo de
meet you.
fotos. Tengo
Speaking
una
of
caja
photos,
de
there's a
fotos.
scene in the film's
de
final act where
cosas que he
Rogers takes a
fotografiado.
picture of
Tengo
Vogel's
hasta
family after
rollos
they
que
all
no
share
he-
some pie.
no he
While this
desglopado.
moment does feel like a stretch, Fred and the Esquire journalist did form a lasting bond. Even if they didn't constantly see each other in person per se, they remained in close contact via email well after the article was published in 1998. In a 2019 article published by The Atlantic, Tom Juneau looked back on his friendship with Rogers. "For as long as I knew him, we corresponded," he wrote. He added towards the end of the article, quote, "He gave so much to me, so much trust and friendship, without asking me to earn it."
You love people like me.
What are people like you?
Broken people. I don't think you were broken.
Number 8. Rogers was advised against doing the interview.
I insisted he read you before we agreed. And did he? Every article we could find.
Early on in the film, Vogel is told by his editor that Rogers is the only person who will do an interview with him. All the other
Chingonera.
celebrities said no due to Vogel's
Qué bueno.
reputation.
You hired me as an investigative journalist.
Tenía
I don't
mucho corazón.
puff pieces.
400 words. Play nice.
It's also strongly hinted at that those
Es lo
who
que
work
quería
with
decir
Rogers
cuando
are
me
not
dijiste eso.
thrilled about Vogel, feeling that he'll paint everyone's favorite neighbor in a negative
Me
light.
encantó esa película.
Profiling Mr. Rogers.
Oh God, Lloyd, please. Don't ruin my childhood.
Nevertheless, Rogers ignores all warning signs and welcomes Vogel with open arms. In reality, Rogers' co-workers did advise him against speaking with the Esquire journalist, pointing out that it could damage his image. Even though people allegedly thought he was crazy for saying yes, Rogers remained true to character and decided to see the good in humanity rather than the bad.
You said it was a play at the plate. Is that what happened to you?
I'm here to interview you, Mr. Rogers.
Well, that is what we're doing, isn't it?
Number 7. Rogers was overweight as a child.
I've often wondered if there hadn't been a Fat Freddy, would there have been a Mr. Rogers?
Although Rogers was a beacon of optimism, his life wasn't without hardships. At one point in the movie, Rogers tells Vogel that he was bullied as a child for being overweight. According to Morgan Neville, who directed the documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor, quote, "People called him Fat Freddy, and he made a very willful decision that that's not gonna be who I am for the rest of my life, and I never was." By the time Rogers was grown up, he weighed a healthy 143 pounds, and he strived to maintain that exact weight. The number was so special to Rogers that he reportedly said, 143 means I love you. Number 6, the time Rogers couldn't put up a tent. During a taping of the show, Vogel bears witness to an unscripted incident where Rogers struggles to put up a camping tent. Rogers ultimately can't get the tent to set up properly, but he decides against doing another take. A few liberties are taken here, as this particular episode aired in 1975, decades before Rogers' Esquire interview took place. Also, in the finished episode, we never see Rogers wrestle with the tent. Instead, it's already been assembled when Rogers walks outside.
Do you have any idea what this might be? It's a tent.
However, Rogers did in fact have a hard time unfolding the tent, which was captured on camera. While this lengthy blooper wasn't featured on the show, Rogers did share it on a 1982 episode of Late Night with David Letterman, demonstrating that nobody's perfect.
Helps to have two people to put these up.
Number 5, Mr. Rogers was an avid swimmer.
Last time I promised I'd show you where I sometimes swim and how I swim. I like to keep my promises.
Throughout a montage, Rogers is seen doing laps in a swimming pool. This sequence is faithful to the real-life Rogers, who swam nearly every morning of his life, according to the Esquire article. In 1997, a year before Can You Say Hero was published, a 69-year-old Rogers was the focus of a Los Angeles Times article entitled Can You Say Avid Swimmer? When asked how often he would swim, Rogers responded, quote, "Every day between 7 and 8:30 before work. I swim 25 minutes hard, and this is in a 75-foot pool. I used to swim at the lunch break, but that was too discombobulating for the schedule maker." Rogers proceeded to say that he'd been keeping up this routine for 35 years.
Wow. Many years ago, I promised myself that I would try to swim a certain length of time each day. And I've done that almost every day for more than 10 years.
Number 4, the Esquire journalist was seen as a bad boy.
I was really going to the dark side on stories, and somebody at the magazine thought it would be really kind of funny having me doing a story on Fred Rogers.
As mentioned before, the film establishes up front that Vogel is a rogue journalist who is not afraid to ask personal questions. Vogel may be an award-winning writer, but no big names want to do an interview with a quote-unquote bad boy. This is true to the actual Esquire journalist, Juno, who had landed in hot water prior to interviewing Rogers. The article in question that garnered him such a notorious reputation was entitled Kevin Spacey Has a Secret, which made coy insinuations about the actor's sexuality.
Oh shit.
This particular article doesn't get singled out here, but considering the more recent news revolving around Spacey, we get why the filmmakers would want to leave his name out of a PG movie. Number 3, Rogers' The Arsenio Hall Show appearance.
There's an attitude out there, there's some things going on, there's a lot of hopelessness. What do we need to do?
Weighs heavy on all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One of the more surreal moments in the film finds Rogers on the Arsenio Hall Show. Hall gives Rogers a multicolored leather jacket which closely resembles his own. Not only did this happen in 1993, but the actual television footage was used in the film. Of course, the real Fred Rogers is swapped out with Tom Hanks through the magic of special effects.
Let people know that each one of us is precious. Let everybody know that we have value in this life.
Hanks' performance is so uncanny, however, that it's honestly like seeing double. The question that remains is if Rogers ever hung the jacket he got from Hall alongside his cardigans.
I think the best thing we can do is to let people know that each one of them is precious.
Number 2, Rogers' vegetarianism.
Let's just think of all kinds of babies drinking milk.
Vegetariano, además.
Sitting down to a meal together, Vogel can't help but notice that Rogers is only eating vegetables. Rogers tells Vogel that he can't bring himself to eat something that has a mother, which is a phrase he regularly said. Rogers reportedly cut meat out of his diet during the early 70s upon reading Diet for a Small Planet, the first widespread book to address how meat production can negatively impact the environment. Frances Moore Lappé urged readers to practice vegetarianism, and Rogers took her advice to heart. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few things the movie got wrong. The journalist's name. While he's called Lloyd Vogel in the movie, the journalist who interviewed Rogers for Esquire is of course actually named Tom Juno. The wedding fistfight. At his sister's wedding in the film, Vogel gets into a heated confrontation with his father, leading to a fistfight between him and another guest. Juno clarified though that not only did he not get into a fight at his sister's wedding, but his sister never had a wedding. The journalist's father and wife. The film also changes the name of Tom Juno's wife, who's really named Janet, and Juno's father, who was actually named Lou. The film made up a fair deal about his family dynamics as well, particularly the one he shared with his father. While Lou Juno was a boozy philanderer, as seen in the movie, Tom said that nonetheless, quote, "I idolized my father despite my mother's warnings." Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You'll have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. One silent minute. At the restaurant with Vogel, Rogers suggests setting aside 1 silent minute before eating. This is another quote that's directly taken out of Rogers' life. At the 24th Annual Daytime Emmy Awards, where he received a Lifetime Achievement Award, Rogers asked the audience to take 10 seconds of silence.
Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are?
While giving his commencement address at Dartmouth College in 2002, Rogers asked attendees to take 1 silent minute.
Imagine how grateful they must be that during your silent times you remember how important they are to you.
These instances really spoke to Rogers' spiritual side, which Tom Juno felt came off as extremely accurate in the movie.
Please won't you be my neighbor?
This video was made in partnership with Nuvi, who are just as obsessed with movies.
Okay. A ver, tienen mucho en español. Posiblemente.
Habla de una estrella fugaz. Bienvenidos a Watch Mojo Español. Yo soy Beto y el día de hoy veremos los resultados del top 10 de los mejores momentos.
¿Viste? Vamos a ver lo que hay. Más odiado de todo el tiempo. Hacen viejos videos que ya hicieron en inglés y que los cambian. Sé que no está muy viejo el canal. No hace años como el otro. El otro es un canal canadiense de Montreal. Ah, empezó. Ups.
New items, metagame rebalances, and an endgame content update which will leave a lasting impact on Path of Exile. Our team have been very hard at work over the last few months, and we've got a lot up our sleeves to share with you today. But before we jump in, we wanted to mention that Twitch drops are enabled for the duration of this live stream. Below the stream, you'll find the instructions to link your Path of Exile account to Twitch so that you're eligible to receive drops. 2020 was certainly a difficult year for development, but it was also one that saw a lot of big things happen with Path of Exile. In late 2019, we held our first ExileCon convention, where we announced several projects, including Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile. Throughout 2020, we developed 4 major expansions: Delirium, Harvest, and Heist, as well as the one we're going to unveil today. We launched on the Epic Games Store and released our Vulkan renderer and a macOS client for Path of Exile. We're really proud of what we achieved last year under difficult conditions and can't wait to continue the journey with you through 2021, where we expect to reveal much more about Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile, as well as 4 releases for Path of Exile, including the one you're about to see. Thanks again for being here with us. It wouldn't be possible without you. In today's livestream, we'll kick things off with a 3.13 announcement trailer, then take a deep dive into exploring the new expansion's content and
Tengo mi
features.
dietita sobre mí.
Once the reveals are wrapped up, we'll launch into a live Q&A where community streamer Ziggy D will ask me questions from Twitch chat, so be sure to get your questions ready. Once the Q&A is over, we'll be jumping into an episode of the Bay Class podcast, where Taki Cat and his crew of Path of Exile veterans will discuss today's reveals. I'm sure you're keen for me to stop talking and start revealing the new content, so let's jump right into the 3.13 trailer. See you on the other side.
¿No quieres? ¿No quieres? Reveal! Reveal!
What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge?
Oh shit.
Honor? No. It is power. We felt your deeds.
Yeah.
Felt their shockwaves ripple through the void. You have our attention.
The arrest. I don't know. No sé.
Now you must keep it. Your limits will be tested. Break them. Do what is thought impossible.
Son dos jefes, boss. Google should add basically 11 new maps, new skills. Shit. We work ascended. Woo! Harvest. Oh yeah, baby. Heist. Fuck. Fuck.
The stars themselves will bear silent witness. How far will you bend before you break?
Ooh. El 15. Echoes of the Atlas. Pues ya sabemos que vamos a jugar el 15.
That's one of my favorite Path of Exile trailers. We've released, what, like 35 trailers so far over the last decade, and I still get shivers watching each new one. Props to our video guy Eben for great work as usual. So there's a lot to cover based on what we've just seen. Let's get right into it.
Cool.
In 2016, we introduced the Atlas of Worlds, a formal progression system for Path of Exile's endgame maps that culminated in a pinnacle boss fight against the Shaper. Since then, the War for the Atlas and Conquest of the Atlas expansions have expanded the Atlas system, introduced new endgame bosses, broadened mechanics, added new rewards, and provided more opportunity for mastery of Path of Exile's endgame. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces a new pinnacle boss, a new way to fight many map bosses at the same time, 11 new maps to explore, and new endgame rewards to earn.
Whoa. Whoa.
Just a few map tiers into Echoes of the Atlas, you will begin to encounter an NPC called the Envoy. It seems that when the Elder was sealed, its absence didn't go unnoticed. The Envoy speaks ominously of new visitors to the Atlas. The first such visitor, and the focus of this endgame expansion, is an entity called the Maven.
Está bien chingona como se.
You'll first encounter the Maven in the boss arena of a map, where she will make the boss encounter more difficult and watch as you do your best to defeat it.
Ah, son of a bitch!
If you're successful, she'll give you her beacon, which lets you call her to any map in that region, so she can watch more fights.
What?
After showing her your boss-killing prowess, she will give you an invitation to her own realm, where she has prepared a special challenge. The Maven really wants to push you to your limits and has fabricated copies of the bosses she watched you defeat. This time, however, you'll have to defeat them simultaneously. If you manage to best her challenge, she'll politely ask you to do the whole cycle again, except this time she wants to watch more and tougher fights, and her next challenge will contain 4 bosses, then 5, then 6, and finally 10.
Whoa.
If you're persistent and talented, you may even get to fight the Maven herself in a very difficult boss encounter designed to challenge the strongest and best Path of Exile players. Completing the Maven's challenges offers the opportunity to acquire some very powerful new rewards, including Atlas passive skill points, craftable watchstones, and even the Maven's Orb. As you complete the Maven's challenges, you'll earn a new type of passive skill point that can be allocated on a special passive skill tree in that region of the Atlas of Worlds. Each of the Atlas's regions has its own passive tree, and they generally have around 20 nodes to choose from. You can earn up to a total of 10 skill points per Atlas region. Let's check out some of the Atlas passive choices in the Glennick Cairns region. This branch allows you to focus on Beyond, increasing the amount of experience granted by Beyond monsters, but also allowing you to spawn more Beyond monsters really easily. The Torn Veil notable will drastically increase the quantity of Beyond demons you can encounter. The Legion branch has a notable passive which increases the amount of time you have to break enemies out, and makes it easier to break them out. It's an example of a skill that you could invest into while you're weak, and then remove it later once you're more powerful. And yes, as I implied here, there is an orb that lets you refund Atlas passives. The Incursion branch allows you to more easily get higher tier rooms in the Temple of Atsuatl, and helps you make a definitive decision on whether to swap specific rooms. On the Ambush branch, the tamper-proof notable passive upgrades all strongboxes to be rare and corrupted. This synergizes incredibly well with the Ambush Zana mod or prophecies like Monstrous Treasure. While it prevents you from re-rolling valuable types of strongboxes, the sheer number of corrupted 6-socket and 6-link items will certainly be tempting.
Entonces van a echar más cosas en todas las otras madres.
The Harvest branch
todas
can increase
las
your
otras
chances of
viejas-
finding a sacred grove,
viejas
increase its
leagues
crafting rewards, and make it
que
more
están bien
likely that you'll
populares.
encounter a Shabi. We'll
Oh,
explain
¿dónde
later in
ves?
the presentation about how
¿Dónde
Harvest is
ves?
being integrated into the core game in this expansion. The Torment branch can increase
Ay,
item
no
drops
te
from
quejes.
possessed and touched monsters, as well as populating the area with some already possessed monsters. These synergize quite well with the Sextants that guarantee a certain amount of rewards from possessed monsters. The Delve branch can increase your Sulfite gains, grant more Master Favor, and grant more Nico Master missions. The Sulfite Infusion notable passive grants Sulfite for defeating map bosses, regardless of whether the area has Nico present.
Es más
This
para
means
la
that you'll be
gente que no
constantly
juega
gaining
seguido.
Sulfite for every map you do in a region, which
Es
is a
lo que
great
está chingón,
strategy
es
if you're
porque
not
es
already
verdaderamente
using
para la
Sulfite
gente que no
scarabs
juega
aggressively.
seguido y que
There
va
are also breach
como
passives,
yo,
which increase
más
your
para mí,
chances of encountering
más
a
para
breach
mí,
and
más
ramp up the
para-
difficulty and rewards of your breaches.
Depende de lo que
Naturally,
haces. Si
new
tienes
endgame
muchas
content means
esas
new endgame
de las
rewards.
orbs que dice que
Watchstones are
para
an endgame
que
item
se
that can
dan,
be placed in
puedes
the Atlas of
hacerlos.
Worlds to upgrade a region's
Eh,
map tiers and add new
buen
base
farming.
maps to that region. There are two types of existing watchstones: quest item ones that can upgrade a region and can't be traded between players, and unique ivory watchstones that provide special bonuses and can be traded. These unique ones are consumed after a number of maps are run.
Whoa.
The
Okay.
Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces 3 new types of craftable watchstones: titanium, chromium, and platinum. Like regular watchstones, these never expire, but unlike regular watchstones, they can be traded and crafted. They are found quite late in your progression through the Atlas. The eventual goal is that you replace all of your base quest item watchstones with new craftable ones over time as you upgrade your Atlas. Each of these 3 types of new watchstone has its own special mod pool, but there's also a shared mod pool that they all draw from. Like flasks, they can only be normal or magic. You can't find or craft rare watchstones. Because you can have up to 4 watchstones socketed in a region, up to 8 mods can affect that region, and some quite large bonuses to specific content can be stacked. When combined with the Atlas passive trees, these really allow you to optimize what content you encounter and the rewards from that content. The Maven's Orb is an endgame crafting currency item that can only drop from the Maven herself.
Oh,
It
shit.
allows you to craft influence modifiers when 2 or more are present on an item by removing one modifier and upgrading another. When upgrading an influence modifier of the current highest tier, it upgrades to a new elevated tier that can have additional properties. This Foul Regalia has 2 Crusader influence modifiers on it, the percentage increased intelligence one and the physical damage taken as lightning damage one. When we apply a Maven's Orb to it, it randomly removes one of these mods and upgrades the other one to become an elevated influence mod. In this case, it upgraded the increased intelligence mod to also have +1 to the level of socketed intelligence gems.
Y quitó
The
el
other
otro.
influence mod was removed. This opens up a mod slot, of course, so it's now possible to add another mod to it. Let's YOLO exalt it for good measure.
YOLO exalted.
Maven's orb crafting is only going to be performed by the upper echelons of elite players and pushes the boundaries of the best items that are possible in Path of Exile. One of the things that players look forward to in an endgame Path of Exile expansion is new maps to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we have added 11 new types of maps to the Atlas of Worlds, covering a wide variety of environments. And of course, each comes with its own challenging boss fight. Let's have a look at 4 of these new tile sets.
Nice. Ahorita vemos los más populares. Los que están más jugados. Ah, se iba a morir. ¿Eso es nuevo?
One of the reasons why these new maps look so good is that the environment art tile set and level design teams working on them have been doing so much work on Path of Exile 2 recently. And it's not just the 4 maps that we showed you here. There are 7 other new maps with their own bosses to discover in-game in this expansion. Whenever we release a new quarterly Path of Exile update, we start a new Challenge League. These are essentially a fresh server to play on for that expansion launch, where players explore the new league mechanics, rush to conquer the new economy, race to level 100, and try to get the best items before their friends. The Challenge League being released alongside Echoes of the Atlas is the Ritual League. In the Ritual League, you'll discover several mysterious altars in each area you explore. Slay the monsters at the ritual site and then activate the altar to initiate the ritual. When it begins, you'll be enclosed within the ritual circle and will have to face off against both the onslaught of monsters you've just slain and also the specific powers of that altar. Each subsequent ritual in the area will summon all the monsters from the previous ones, so the difficulty and reward ramp up as you challenge yourself with each successive ritual.
Te da un chingo de cosas.
Monsters you kill after you have activated a ritual grant you points called tribute. At the end of each ritual, you'll have an opportunity to spend this tribute on various reward items. These items vary greatly in power and cost, so you may find you can afford several cheaper ones or one more valuable one. For clarity, tribute doesn't transfer between game areas. As you complete subsequent rituals in the same area, more potential rewards will be revealed, which can be very expensive. If you can't afford to purchase a reward outright, you can spend a portion of its cost to defer it until later. This means that it will show up in a later area at a reduced price. Items can be deferred multiple times until you can eventually afford them, and for some of the most valuable rewards in this league, this may be the easiest way to obtain them. You can also spend some tribute to re-roll the contents of the reward screen one time per instance if you'd like a new set of reward items to choose from. Among the many other rewards you can choose from in Ritual are a special new set of Ritual base types. These are craftable items that have different implicit modifiers than Path of Exile's regular base types. Specifically, they have a strong upside combined with an accompanying downside. If you can create a build that mitigates this drawback, then you can take advantage of the power of these items and craft them into something amazing. For example, these Nexus gloves reduce your maximum mana, but have a chance of immediately refunding the mana spent to use a skill. If you can work around this restriction to your mana pool, you can periodically use skills for essentially no mana cost. Here are 2 other examples of Ritual base types, the Penitent Mask and the Stormrider Boots. The Penitent Mask applies the Crush debuff to you, removing your physical damage protection. However, its upside is that it increases the effect of Fortify on you by quite a lot, reducing the damage you take from hits. There are many situations where this is a huge win, such as if you already have no armor or endurance charges. The Stormrider Boots reduce your accuracy rating but provide a huge added lightning damage boost to your attacks based on your accuracy rating. If you have other sources of accuracy to rely on, then this is potentially a huge increase to the lightning damage you deal. In the endgame, you can obtain Ritual vessels, which allow you to itemize the monsters from a ritual. You can place up to 4 vessels in the map device alongside a map to add the monsters stored in those vessels to the rituals present in the map. This increases both the difficulty and rewards of the rituals, as well as generating even more tribute to spend on those rewards.
Entonces los puedes sacar de cada mapa y los puedes poner en otro mapa.
For example, because there's a chance of encountering a Headhunter or Mirror of Calandra as rewards, using ritual vessels increases the chances you'll be offered those items and allows you to afford them. In addition, you can use these vessels to substantially increase monster density and max out maps that have mechanics like Beyond or Delirium present. Using vessels, you have control over the risk and reward of your hardest ritual encounters. Vessels are tradable both before and after they contain monsters. In addition to the new endgame content in the Ritual Challenge League, a large focus of the Echoes of the Atlas expansion is on its Ascendancy classes.
Nice.
Path of Exile has 19 Ascendancy classes, which let you specialize your character further than the base character classes allow. To unlock your Ascendancy class, you must find the Altar of Ascendancy at the end of the Lord's Labyrinth. In this expansion, we've rebalanced every one of these 19 classes and have significantly reworked 3 of them, the Elementalist, the Inquisitor, and the Deadeye. The aim of these changes is to redistribute and simplify power so that Ascendancy passive skills perform stronger single functions more effectively. Let's check some of them out. The Elementalist has always been a good general Ascendancy class for many elemental builds, but lacked really in-depth build options. Now you can pick which elemental ailments to use for greater build customization, as well as providing more consistent power against tougher enemies. The Elementalists can also protect themselves from a large amount of elemental damage. Bastion of Elements provides a significant defensive shield against elemental damage, which can be further improved by allocating more skills on your passive tree and Ascendancy tree. The Liege of the Primordial and Elemental skills focus on golem builds. Taking Liege of the Primordial now means that your golems are automatically resummoned 4 seconds after they die. To make your golems immune to elemental damage, you'll now need to spec into Elementor as well as Liege of the Primordial. Previously, the Shaper of Desolation skill forced you to improve both Shocking and Chilling, even if you didn't use both. We've now moved these benefits into their own branches, culminating in the Shaper of Flames, Winter, and Storm skills, allowing you to pick which ailments you improve. You can use and enhance Ignite, Chill, and Shock on any build. Mastermind of Discord no longer focuses on heralds and allows you to strip all elemental resistances from your enemies effectively.
Shit.
Pendulum of Destruction has been reworked as Heart of Destruction, providing more elemental damage or area of effect when you need them most. The Inquisitor has derived much of its power from its Inevitable Judgment skill, but the rest of the tree was fairly straightforward and lacked anything truly unique. After our changes in this expansion, many more of the Inquisitor skills provide significantly more offensive or defensive power, while Instruments of Zeal opens up an entirely new and very unique playstyle. Let's have a look at some of the new Inquisitor Ascendancy skills. Pious Path no longer affects attack and cast speed, and now allows you to double the potential recovery of life regeneration by having it apply equally to Energy Shield.
Shit.
Sanctuary no longer provides mana, but now has a larger damage bonus from Consecrated Ground, up from 10% to 15%. Righteous Providence has been simplified a lot. It still focuses on critical strike chance, but it now scales it up by a percentage equivalent to either your strength or intelligence value, whichever one is lowest. It also provides plus 50 to both of these attributes, which is a huge benefit in multiple ways. You will definitely want lots of both attributes. Instruments of Virtue has been simplified and made more powerful. Its benefits no longer strictly apply if you cast a spell or attack recently, but it now grants 10% more attack damage for each non-instant spell you've cast recently, up to a maximum of 30%.
No sabemos todavía cómo
It also grants Battle Mage, which causes you to gain added spell damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon.
Builds que ya
This
están
provides a lot of
creados,
new
¿no?
hybrid spellcast and melee build possibilities.
Vamos a tener que hacer uno.
You can combine Instruments of Virtue with the new Instruments of Zeal Ascendancy passive. This introduces the concept of Fanaticism, which causes spells you cast yourself to have 75% more cast speed, reduced mana cost, and increased area of effect. Fanaticism is gained by using attacks regularly, giving huge bonuses for weaving attacking and spellcasting together. Historically, the Deadeye Ascendancy was the best place to find a variety of strong projectile-based effects. But over time, more of these effects have shown up on items, and the Deadeye has lost much of what made it unique. We've brought the uniqueness back to this Ascendancy with a variety of new mechanics that enable new ways to build and play ranges. Let's have a look at the new Deadeye Ascendancy skills.
A ver el Deadeye.
Fireshot now deals 60% more damage to enemies far away from you, which is up from 30% before, but now also deals 20% less damage to enemies that are close. It no longer has a projectile speed bonus, but now removes the spread from your barrages. This additional damage rewards Deadeyes who can keep their distance from their targets. Previously, Ricochet caused your projectiles to chain an additional time and granted 10% more damage for each remaining chain. The new Ricochet allows your projectiles to both chain an additional time and have a chance to chain off walls and terrain. Endless Munitions has been simplified to offer 2 additional projectiles rather than 1 additional projectile and some other minor bonuses. This skill is accessible behind 3 of the Deadeye's paths, making it an option for many different Deadeye builds.
Nice.
Occupying Force is a new skill that benefits Mirage Archers by granting you additional ones and allowing them to be separate from you.
Nice!
Gathering Winds now always grants Tailwind to permanently boost your speed, and the increase to Tailwind effect per skill used is now given by the Gale Force buff. Wind Ward enhances the Gathering Winds passive by making Gale Force a lot more effective, with the drawback of losing all Gale Force if you're hit. If you can stay out of the fray, this potentially makes your character even more potent. The Rupture skill previously helped Critical Strike bleed builds. It's been renamed to Rupturing and has been simplified while being made more powerful. Critical strikes that inflict bleeding now also inflict Rupture, which causes bleeding enemies to lose more life, but their bleed expires more quickly. Focal Point is a new skill which improves the effect of mark skills that were made more powerful in our recent Heist expansion. It increases the effect of your marks by 75% and makes surrounding enemies deal less damage to you. As you have seen, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye have undergone some major changes in this expansion. We have also improved the other 16 Ascendancy classes and will show you some of the changes to the Slayer to demonstrate what you can expect.
Slayer?
Some Slayer effects were much stronger than others, limiting build choice. We've now provided more power spread out over a wider selection of passives, while allowing easier access to the Slayer's special leech mechanic. Brutal Fervor and Endless Hunger have switched places on their Ascendancy branch so that Life Leech is more accessible and can be further improved by speccing into Endless Hunger. Masterful Form still causes you to have endurance charges equal to the number of frenzy charges you have, but now grants an additional frenzy charge instead of increasing endurance and frenzy charge duration. Overwhelm's base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons has been increased. Hopefully you now have a good idea of the scope of changes that we have made to the 19 Ascendancy classes. While the biggest changes to the 3 we're heavily revamping, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye, all of the others have received at least numeric attention also. We believe that the new design philosophy for Ascendancy passives makes them easier to understand and that they are a more concentrated source of power. We look forward to revealing the rest of the changes next week. Like with improving Ascendancy classes, adding new skill and support gems to Path of Exile helps create new ways to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we've introduced 2 new gems that provide versatile ways for you to build powerful new characters. These are the Hydrosphere skill gem and the Trinity support gem. First, let's have a look at Hydrosphere. The skill summons a huge sphere of water that you can move around to crush enemies. While it is active, you can apply cold or lightning ailments to it. It will then pulse for a duration, afflicting nearby enemies with damage matching that ailment. This player is applying freeze to the Hydrosphere with freezing pulse, and that causes it to repeatedly damage surrounding enemies with cold damage. Here's the gem hover for Hydrosphere. This skill gem can be acquired from level 34 and can be supported with spell, area of effect, duration, cold, orb, lightning, and physical support gems. It pulses every 0.4 seconds while an ailment is applied to it. It also converts its physical damage to cold or lightning damage based on what ailments are on it. The Trinity support gem is designed to support builds that deal multiple types of elemental damage. While Trinity supports your skill, any hits that deal damage with a specific element will build resonance with the other 2 elements. The more resonance you have of every element, the more damage the Trinity support gem provides. When you have high resonance with all 3 elements, Trinity also grants elemental penetration. Here you can see the player using Ball Lightning with Unleash and Magma Orb to build resonance across all 3 elements. To power up the Trinity support gem quickly and uniformly, the player alternates between pairs of elemental damage types. Combined with the elemental weakness curse, the maximum resonance Trinity absolutely decimates enemies. In addition to introducing the 2 entirely new gems we described, we have done an extensive balance pass on other skills. We have buffed over 40 existing gems, including skills such as Scorching Ray, Seismic Trap, Firestorm, Venom Gyre, Static Strike, Kinetic Bolt, Crackling Lance, Lightning Strike, Shrapnel Ballista, and Artillery Ballista. Full details will be available in the patch notes next week so that you can plan your perfect build. As well as introducing and rebalancing skills, another important aspect of keeping the metagame fresh in a Path of Exile expansion is adding new unique items to discover and build characters around. Unlike most items you find in Path of Exile that are randomly generated, unique items are extremely rare ones that our design team have hand-created to offer new build opportunities. Echoes of the Atlas introduces 10 new unique items, some of which are exclusive to its new endgame encounters. Let's have a look at a few. These are some unique worm-scale boots called Legacy of Fury. They place scorched ground as you travel, which applies the scorch element to enemies standing in it. When scorched enemies die, they have a chance to set fire to surrounding enemies, dealing a percentage of the slain enemy's life over time. These boots create an interesting and new way to support your build with fire damage. This is a new unique amethyst ring called Black Flame, which is themed around fire and chaos damage. Its headline effect is that your ignites now deal chaos damage, along with a cool new chaos ignited effect on monsters. Also, if you ignite a withered enemy while wearing Black Flame, the wither will no longer expire, and you can build up to its maximum of 15 stacks, if the enemy survives long enough, that is. Along with its various other benefits, this unique ring should ignite a few new ways of playing fire and chaos damage characters. These new Zealot gloves are called Hand of the Fervent and create an interesting interaction between physical damage and the mana cost of skills. The unique ability of these gloves happens whenever you use a skill. They grant an effect called Sacrificial Zeal, which both adds a quarter of the skill's mana cost to spell physical damage, but also hurts you, to the tune of 150% of the skill's mana cost over 4 seconds. They also reduce your enemy's physical damage reduction. When we have time during an expansion's development, we try to identify past leagues that can be integrated into the core game as optional side content, with a few improvements. This expansion contains 2 such leagues. Last year, we released the Harvest League, which allows you to grow a garden of monsters, fight them, and then use their lifeblood to craft your items in powerful ways. Watching this league unfold made us realize 2 things. Firstly, the crafting options were so powerful and so easily accessible that players had unprecedented access to almost everything they wanted very quickly. Secondly, even the players who did enjoy the mechanics of growing their own garden would probably find it boring if that was something they had to do every single league. When deciding how to integrate Harvest into the core game, we knew that we had to curtail crafting somehow, but we didn't want to just do this by nerfing it a lot. We needed a smarter solution that still allowed players to earn and perform powerful crafts. We also knew that we didn't want players to have to grow and manage their own gardens every league. So let's check out how Harvest works as part of the core game in Echoes of the Atlas. In Echoes of the Atlas, as you play through maps, rather than finding a seed cache, you'll now encounter a portal to the Sacred Grove. But it's not your own Sacred Grove, it's an established one that has a full complement of plants ready to harvest, fight, and craft with. The grove contains several pairs of harvests to choose between, each displaying the details of the fight and the corresponding crafting options. You can only pick one of each pair, so carefully choose which crafting options are best for you, defeat the monsters, and use their life force to perform the crafts. If you're strong enough to kill the monsters, each grove represents quite a lot of crafting opportunities, and you can save up to 10 crafts for later use at the Hoarder crafting station, which is now available in your hideout. We like this compromise because it keeps the exciting elements of harvest, fighting, and crafting, and drops the part that got old quickly, seed management and garden planning. We're also integrating the Heist League into the core game as optional content, with a few improvements. In Heist, players travel to the Rogue Harbor to hire a crew of thieves to help them plan and execute risky heists, working towards a thief's ultimate goal, pulling off a grand heist. In the Echoes of the Atlas expansion, heist contracts drop from Act 6 onwards. Rogues level up their skills faster from completing heists, markers drop with higher stack sizes, and quest contracts are now dropped for you at the next smuggler's cache as soon as that quest is available. One great aspect of Heist is that all of its progress items are tradable, so if you're focusing on other content, you can trade away your contracts until you're ready to go on some heists. So we've covered most of the big features of Echoes of the Atlas so far. Keep an eye out for the patch notes in a few days where we will detail other changes that didn't make it into this presentation. Soon we'll move on to the Q&A about today's announcements, but first, let's have a quick look at the new supporter packs that are available right now to celebrate the Echoes of the Atlas expansion and the Ritual Challenge League, and to help fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile.
Dinero.
The Faithsworn and Renegade supporter packs come with masses of points to spend in the store, social frames, forum titles and badges, a download of the digital soundtrack, and of course exclusive cosmetic microtransactions such as armor sets and character effects. The Renegade series has an exclusive pet, and the Faithsworn series an exclusive portal effect. Each series has 2 packs, and the smaller packs can be upgraded to their respective larger packs at any time while they are still on sale. These are, of course, in addition to the new core packs that we released a couple of weeks ago. Remember to check those out if you haven't already. Thanks so much for your support. As you know, purchases of these packs are what fund ongoing development of Path of Exile, its expansions, and its sequel. Speaking of Path of Exile 2, we have been looking for an update. While today is all about Path of Exile and Echoes of the Atlas, we have plenty of Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile mobile updates planned for you this year, which will start sooner than you think. Our team have been creating some amazing stuff and we can't wait to reveal it to you. So, I'm sure you have a bunch of burning questions about Echoes of the Atlas. Stay tuned as we're joined by Ziggy D, who will be hosting a Q&A with me based on your questions from Twitch chat.
Chingo. Qué chingo. Q&A coming. Playing. Got it. Yeah. ¿Qué me dieron? Esta drops. Loot page. There. No. Got it. Oops. Fiction? Ah. Oh, magma wings. Wow, me dieron los magma wings. Qué chingón.
To the Q&A segment for today's reveal. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris Wilson.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks very much for hosting. That was a lot of fun, actually.
That was I think since ExileCon, the most dense info reveal that we've had all in one go. I think people are a little bit overwhelmed. I saw a lot of people kind of exploding in chat, saying too much with the heads exploding.
Yeah, it was honestly trying to revive what we were doing at ExileCon with this announcement. You know, we had a lot of fun presenting everything ourselves to the players last year on stage, and we thought, why not try that again? Took a bunch of work to prepare the live stream, of course, but yeah, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, because this is quite different to how you normally go about revealing things. So I was trying to recapture that ExileCon magic a little bit, which I think everyone is kind of in need of at the moment. It's exciting
Esto
to see.
me acaban de dar.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good distraction away from real world stuff and a good chance to get stuck into some POE in the new year.
Es lo que me acaban de
Absolutely.
dar.
So we're going to jump into some questions, and this is a live Q&A. So you of course then post your questions in chat as well. Chris, phone's off, Chris.
Yeah, well, people are just calling me on Discord because they see me on like Twitch.
They're excited. They're like, hey, I'm going to call Chris right now. Now's the perfect
You're on
time
the
to call
internet, bro.
Hey, Chris, wow, do you realize you're on the internet?
Tío,
We're
todavía
going to
está
jump into
down.
some pre-made questions, but you
Tío,
of course can
todavía
submit your
está
questions
down.
in the chat. We have a team of mods who are pulling questions throughout that we'll answer a little bit later on. First, though, let's start off with Echoes of the Atlas, the new overall major expansion. So this is like the core game content expansion, really end game focus. with this character, the Maven. So this seems like an expansion to the Cyrus and Conquerors endgame that we have right now, in a similar fashion to how the Elder was an expansion to the Shaper endgame. Is there a similar sort of intertwining of the storylines here, like there was with the Shaper and Elder?
So our goal is that they exist entirely in parallel to each other, right? Like the Maven stuff is there at the same time as all the Cyrus stuff, but story-wise they're different. It's more of a story expansion to the Elder storyline, actually, because whatever type of entity the Elder was, the Maven is also, and so there's some stuff for players to explore there. And so the Cyrus stuff still exists in parallel. We haven't taken anything away, though we do want to foreshadow that it's very likely that before the release of Path of Exile 2, we'll probably remove or substantially modify the Cyrus storyline as well. We're still evolving the endgame in the direction we wanted to be in for the release of POE 2, but the Maven will probably be around for some time.
I really like this otherworldly stuff that you've been kind of hinting at for years, like these other kind of universes that leak into ours in Path of Exile. So this seems like a further exploration of that, which I'm pretty excited about. But what led to the decision to kind of go that route and continue with like the Elder kind of connected storyline instead of continuing or doing something else with Cyrus's? Or was that just self-contained and felt complete?
The writers have a lot of plan for what they want to do in the future, and it is leading up to, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the story of Path of Exile 2 and what's going on there, but we do have an overarching plan along our franchise, and so it's important for us to drop hints and set things up correctly with Path of Exile 1 in the meantime.
I still remember years and years ago when you said you had like a plan for 10 acts and a decade worth of content and things like that. Well, still going along with that like long
Mejorar un
arcing
poquito
plan then.
Stretches out another 10 years now, yep.
Good stuff. That's good to hear. It's good to hear. So, how does the Mavens? This is something I wasn't clear on from the thing. How does the Mavens kind of gameplay loop or cycle work in terms of content? How you engage with it? Does the Maven progression occur alongside the Cyrus and Watchstone progression?
Yeah, it's entirely alongside. Like, it's entirely possible to complete all the Maven stuff without yet fighting Cyrus, and vice versa. Basically, after you've encountered the Maven for the first time, you can call her to witness map boss kills of yours. And so basically, when you're using the map device in an area, you click the little Maven icon to use her beacon, and then she will be present in the map for the fight. And her presence makes it more difficult, and it means that you've basically captured a copy of that map boss, and it puts an icon next to that map on the atlas. And then from time to time, you'll get an invitation to her realm, where there's an escalating number of bosses you have to fight simultaneously, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 10 one can be farmed. That's the one there that is a item that you can craft mods onto. And so that's the fight that you basically get to repeat with really good rewards if you're able to kill 10 bosses at once. And so there's kind of two parallel things you're doing there. You're earning the invitations to the realm, and you're also locking bosses in that she's got copies of. And this is on a per region basis. And that progression there is what dictates your passive points that you unlock on those region trees. And so there's 5 sets of 2 points that you receive for completing the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 boss fights, respectively. And then, of course, after completing the 10 fight, you have the opportunity to occasionally potentially challenge the Maven herself.
Okay, I'm guessing that'll be kind of secrets to be revealed from
Yeah, I'm
launch.
sure
The actual
people
Maven
will work
fights.
it out. And this is all in parallel to the existing Watchstone progression, though, of course, it's
La gente lo va a encontrar verdaderamente bien rápido.
Yeah, okay. And you said this in the initial reveal, it said that this kicks
Que dice
in
que va a
around
haber
like a few
secretos,
tiers
¿no?
into
Como
the Atlas. You
para
start
pelearte con la
capturing the
Maven.
bosses.
That's
And
right.
we
Pero
don't need nets for that, right?
la gente lo va a encontrar
We
rápido.
took nets out early in development.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm pretty excited about this idea of fighting 10 map bosses at a time. I love boss fights in general. But something interesting we learned from Metamorph
Ya no
and
sé.
the lab
A mí no me gusta
fights
mucho la idea.
version of the Metamorph bosses was that it's often the map mods that actually make bosses difficult, and fighting them outside of that is often a lot easier in comparison. So how will the boss fights here, these Maven boss fights, be scaled in difficulty in the actual Maven's arena?
So as you're playing through them, initially doing 3, then 4, then 5, and so on, those ones there are difficult because there's multiple bosses at the same time. But by the time you need mods in order to make them harder, that's when mods start to
Dios
kick in on the
attacking.
invitation items that you get for the
And
farmable 10 boss
Blizzard.
fight. So that one's craftable. And so you definitely want to pump the rewards on that one as much as you can, because that's the place where you're finding a lot of the good in-game rewards from. You're finding, chase uniques, and you're finding craftable watchstones. And
Hey, que bloquearon
Okay, I
el
have a
Twitch
few
channel de
questions from
Trump
that.
account.
Unexpected ones. You mentioned invitation items, so there's an itemized system here.
So the first invitations that you receive from the Maven to go to her realm and fight some locked-in bosses, they're quest items, basically, because there's a strict progression of 3, 4, 5, and so on. The 10 invitation, where you get to, that's the farmable one, that one there is a tradable item. And so you're bottlenecked by both having 10 bosses in the can, as it were, and also having the item with the mods that you want. And so because they're tradable, of course, it may be that you want to go and craft or trade for some that are incredibly good, or maybe you find one that's great, but it's too difficult for you, so you just trade it and get chaos to spend on something else.
So they have the bosses on them, on the item, and also mods, it sounds like?
So to be clear about that, you're locking in bosses on your atlas at any time, and the item is entirely separate. And so you'll of course have the item by the time you have the bosses because they drop at a similar rate, but it's entirely possible that you do have surplus items that you want to trade to other people. And it may be that you're going for just harder bosses, like you want to lock in 10 incredibly difficult and rewarding ones rather than 10 of the easier ones. And so, the two progressions are in parallel with each other.
Okay. Yep.
Quería ver lo que pasó
And does the bosses you choose have an impact beyond just difficulty?
con otro streamer
I
que
don't
me
actually
encanta,
know the
que
answer to that.
mi
Does anyone
favorito.
who's watching over here want to
Zeke.
clarify?
Ezekiel the
It's just the
third.
difficulty, and of course, people will have strategic reasons to fight certain ones.
Right. Yeah.
I
Build
certainly
selection.
know from last time I was playing high tier maps, there are bosses I do not want to be fighting simultaneously, so I would not pick those.
Can you put like multiple of the same boss in, like 10 Katavas or something?
I don't
Or they
believe
have to be different?
I mean,
Okay.
the engine supports it. Don't get me wrong. This is a potential for the future, but you're fighting unique ones, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Yeah.
This it's actually the first thing I thought when I saw it was it reminded me of those videos you put out of like bosses fighting each other. Is it kind of inspired by that or something?
Well, it's interesting because when we initially designed all the map boss fights, we made them work in their respective arenas, right? There's various triggers and distances and all that kind of stuff. And we have put so much work into making it so that bosses can work anywhere, so that you could just drop a Katava on the coast, essentially. For this and other things, the ability to have map bosses just occur in any place gives us a lot of extra content in the game. And so that's being tried out in the Maven's arena here. And it's funny, honestly, so much of the work on the expansion was genericizing the map boss fights without making the fights any less awesome.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I imagine it was difficult to get things like Katava and stuff that were very locked in place, working in different arenas. I'm afraid that we're going to see things like Katava starts dragging himself around by the arms or something like that, terrifying like that.
Well, wait and see.
Okay. So, in terms of the Atlas here, it seems like a pretty substantial step up in complexity with
Noticias
craftable
están todas.
watchstones and the Atlas passive trees, which look pretty insane, alongside the current watchstone progression systems, which a lot of people feel are already it's a pretty complex system for a lot of people. Things. How do you think the average or newer players are going to handle? How do they handle the current Atlas? Firstly, and how do you think they'll handle this?
It's pretty endgame, and that means you have a pretty good understanding by the time you get to it. It's also introduced at a rate that's relatively manageable. You get it in pieces, and it's kind of optional as well. Like putting watchstones in, sure, it's complicated if you want to roll the best ones, but you're unlocking these over quite a period of time. Like they are valuable, they are in-game rewards. You do need to get them one at a time, and you have control over what the mods are. And so it doesn't really matter if you make mistakes there, because it's just going to mean you get worse rewards for your content. And so we don't think it's going to hamper anyone's enjoyment of the game if they're not maximizing the system. But of course, as they learn more about it, they will certainly benefit. And as you know, with a free-to-play game, many players who play it don't quite get through to red tier maps, and we're okay with that, but those who do will certainly have a lot of stuff here that they can play.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah, unlike regular watchstones, it doesn't stop you from progressing so much as just give you extra reward engaging with the system well. So it seems like there's actually quite a lot of extra reward here. The passive trees in
Hay un chingo
collaboration
de
with these new
cosas,
craftable
mucho loot
watchstones.
que
From
te
what I saw
pueden
of those
dar.
passive trees, there's a lot of stuff like guaranteeing generals and legions and stuff like that that are juicing up the rewards quite a bit. How much more rewarding do you feel the Atlas is going to be? And I guess you guys are comfortable with how much extra we're going to be getting?
Well, part of it is that for a while, players have complained. A word they often use disparagingly is clutter, that the end game has a lot of alternate systems that you can choose between. And while we philosophically believe that it's great for there to be a choice of content for people to
Simplemente me
play,
dan
and they
ganas
should
de
play
jugar
whatever
a
content
Pata
they
Pixel
enjoy the most and are best
después.
at,
Entonces
we
vamos a
want
jugar
to
a
allow
Pata
them to
Pixel
double
después.
down on content. We want them to be able to say, I like this, I want to see it more often, and I want to see it be more rewarding. And that way, you customize what you want to be playing, and then you play that, and you get good rewards for it. And that enables you to trade those rewards to people who did other stuff. So, for example, if you just hate incursion, you never want to touch a temple in your life, but you want double corrupted items, you just do heist or harvest or whatever it is that you enjoy a lot and trade those items for the double corrupted ones. And so both the Watchstones and the Atlas passives here allow you to influence content that you're encountering, make it more rewarding, and basically specialize, while still making sure that there's a broad base of Path of Exile content for you to experience if you do want to try something new.
I have always really liked the idea of us being able to really specialize in certain pieces of content. And we've seen, I think, a progression towards more and more of that, which is pretty interesting to see. It almost seems like a step towards giving us the ability to choose which of these things. Like you mentioned, people saying that there's a bit too much clutter. There's like the option to effectively choose now which ones you actually care about.
We've certainly discussed ideas of reducing the base rate and having this stuff amp it up. And,
Pronto.
that's a change we might even see before release, potentially, depending on how
Pronto
balancing
vamos a
goes. But
poder
we do
probar
want content to be
todo
available
eso que estás diciendo.
that you encounter occasionally. Even if you've chosen to
8
specialize in other
días,
things,
no
it's
es
nice to
mucho.
occasionally run into it, to have an
La
opportunity
semana
to try
próxima
it.
van a sacar
That's
el
the only
patch.
way a player's going to work out
Vamos
that
a
they
saber
actually
qué vamos
can
a
do that
jugar.
content and that they do like it.
Yo creo
And
que va
so,
a ser los
there's
nuevos.
plenty of time in the future
Vamos a
to
jugar
tweak
uno
this
de
in
los
future
nuevos.
expansions, but it's
Elementalist
likely
o
that we
Inquisition.
are not just going to turn content outright off and
Un
hide it
paladín.
away.
It's almost like they're little demos to tempt you into maybe trying to specialize in those and see how you go. It's like, oh, I keep seeing these Legion things. I wonder what it would be like if I specialize in those.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Hmm.
How hard is it to respect these Atlas passive trees? Are they something we're adjusting really often or leaving intact most of the time?
So there is a currency that lets you refund it, and that currency, of course, has a value. How long is a piece of string, right? Like, you're not going to be able to do this super easily, but wealthy endgame players can absolutely, respec as much as they need to. It's just going to cost them, and there's going to be an opportunity cost to that.
Mhm.
Now, there are strategies, of course, where you may want to respec these aggressively. You might work out that the best way of getting currency is to actively manage what Atlas passives you've chosen. And to do so, of course, that's going to burn a bunch of currency achieving that, and players will work out the right amount to do that's still profitable for themselves.
Yeah, I imagine this is like something when people are doing the like fully juiced content where they're stacking sextants and everything else to get specific content. That might be something they adjust to synergize with those things once they like get the stars to align for
Exactly.
things
And
staying
honestly,
dropped.
because this, like most things in Path of Exile, is a market-driven thing, it means that if there's little need to respec, then the respec orbs will inevitably be very cheap, and that means you can respec easily and there's no problem. And if it's just insanely profitable to respec dynamically, then people will do that and it will make it expensive, and we'll just have to have a look at the effects of this and rebalance it later on if needed.
Okay, so the reveal kind of slipped something in there that people might have missed. You mentioned that the Maven is the first. So
Mhm.
is this planned as an expandable system with more people like the Maven, more
So you're
creatures like the
referring to
Maven?
the Eldritch entities that have noticed that the Elder is missing.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll see more in future expansions. Who knows? I mean, we've got many decades of lifespan left to spend on this project, so we have to come up with some more entities at some point.
I'm a sucker for things like that where you're like hinting at the fact that there's like an expanded kind of lore universe here that it's going to
Mhm.
draw from.
We
I thought I'd
tienen
ask. I figured it
otros
would be a maybe answer
universos.
though.
Ah.
Let's move on
Era
to
como
ritual.
normal, ¿no? Es un poquito lo que
So
estamos
the
viviendo, un
ritual sites,
poquito
it
un
says that we
segundo
pull
universo
monsters to
después
them,
que
or do we kill
lo
monsters in the
hicieron
area? Are we
una
intended
vez
to pull
cuando
monsters to these
aprendimos
ritual
todo
sites, and do
con
we
el
pull
Atlas.
bosses to them?
Right, so you
Con
definitely
los
don't need
conquerors
to and should not
Atlas,
pull a monster
con
to
el
the
que acaba
site,
de
and we did this
pasarnos.
on purpose, because if it counts the monsters that are nearby, and if there was a benefit for pulling monsters there, then the correct behavior is to grab half the map and drag it to a ritual,
Ahora
and that's
como
not fun.
enseñan que la
So the
próxima
way it
etapa va
works
a
is when
ser
a ritual
como
spawns, it's near some
que ahora
monsters
sabemos que
organically
hay
because
otros
it's biased towards
mundos,
monsters, and it
pues
has a bunch
ahora
of extra
sabemos que hay
monsters on
otros
it. And
güeyes
so
como
those
el Elder.
monsters that are near it, you do have to clear before you start the ritual, but there's no need to pull extra monsters in. It literally does nothing. So you clear the ritual by killing all the monsters nearby, and it'll be a decent fight. And then you tag the ritual altar, and that resummons all the monsters in a staggered formation as you're fighting against the effects of the altar. And we didn't make it super clear in the video, but there are lots of different types of altars with lots of like arena-based combat that you get to do
Lo que
there.
pensaba.
It's not really like an Orion mission where it's slow-paced. This is something that's really throwing monsters in your face. It's meant to be a fast-paced, bite-sized combat encounter. And then each of the subsequent ones that you do has all those monsters and more. And so because they ramp up in difficulty and reward, we totally expect weaker players to like call it and not do the last rituals in the area if it's just getting too hard for them. And so it's meant to be a thing where you do as many as you feel you can handle, which I get it for most people that have, made an effort to watch this stream probably means all of them because they're good at the game. But you never know, it might get pretty hard for you.
Just trying to flatter the crowd. You're
It
also
is
good
true
at the
that the
game.
top 10% of players are the ones that are watching right now. They're making an
Fair.
effort to talk about the game.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of items in this store once you finish the ritual that you can purchase using as ritual points. Do the rares in there use the new high quality rare generation system that we saw a taster of in Heist?
Some of them do. There are basically different categories of things that can appear in the favor rewards. Favors are what we're calling the items you buy with tribute. And so some of them are templates that generate high quality rares where it biases the mods, and some of them are not. It really depends what we're trying to achieve with that particular slot. And we've tried to have a lot of variety in there. So yeah, occasionally you'll find exceptionally good stuff, and occasionally you'll find stuff that's there for another reason, potentially because it's got like let's say it's got influence on it. It probably doesn't need to have insanely good mods at the same time, because what we're trying to achieve there is giving you an influence rare rather than particularly good rare.
Okay, so we'll kind of notice themes for the items that they're built around then.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you complete a ritual, there's this ritual item store, and it reveals a bunch of items for the first ritual of that map, and there's multiple rituals per map. Do the later rituals in the same map add more items to that same stock, or are they a new stock of items each time?
So the way it works is that the items are in the first window and some of them are hidden. So those ones, if you check back at the footage, have like a little icon over them. It's shrouded. It was initially the present wrapping thing that we use occasionally. That looked real weird for it to be a bunch of birthday presents basically in the window. So the unrevealed items are there, and the reason why is so that you don't just cycle doing the first ritual in each area repeatedly until you find one with good rewards. The incentive is that you actually play through the rituals to get to the more advanced items, and the ones that are hidden from you are the more expensive ones, the ones that cost more tribute. Now, obviously, the best strategy is probably to do all the rituals first before deciding what to buy. That's fully intentional, right? It's not gaming the system to save your money until you can make a fully informed choice. But the reason that we show them early is because there's no reason not to allow people to go shopping with their tribute if they do see something they like. Like if you're looking for a Chaos Orb and you can afford a Chaos Orb after a couple of rituals, just buy it if you want it. I mean, you could wait a little bit longer if it doesn't hurt to wait longer, but you can make purchases early on if you choose to.
Making it so that we don't cycle the first thing in a map and jump straight into a new map, and making it so that we can defer items for purchase later. I feel like you're learning from our behaviors and complaints.
Yes.
Thanks. It's good. Does any of the unique ritual loot or any of the ritual-ish loot, such as new bases or uniques, drop from monsters during the rituals as well, or are all the new things purchasable from this favor store?
They're all purchasable from the favor store. So the new rewards do not drop from the actual monsters while you're fighting it. And we did that because we wanted the player to have to make a informed decision to pick that item, a chance for them to be presented with it and decide it versus other tempting things at the same time, to have a bit more gravitas there.
Okay, so I'm curious about these ritual vessels then. So they capture monsters from a ritual site to use in later maps. Is this instead of doing the ritual, or an after thing after you finish the ritual?
It's an after thing. So you do a ritual, and if you think, man, that was a lot of monsters, somehow I got a boss in there, I kind of feel there's a lot of tribute, let's capture it. And then you capture it after it. So you still got all the benefits of killing the monsters, all the tribute you get your reward from that, and then you have a chance of capturing that so that you can use it to juice a map up later.
I imagine the ritual favor points based on the monsters you kill. So does having a boss in there give you a lot more or something?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll get an idea for what just gave you a lot of favor, and that's when you stick it in a bottle and use that to juice up a map later. And it's one of those things where not only do the ritual vessels give you a bunch of favor by using them on a map, but it also just makes better rewards spawn. And so you'll get a totally juiced map. You'll chuck Beyond and Delirium on it, throw as many of these vessels as you can in there, and just have an absolutely insane time, and then get a boatload of tribute, and really hope that you have good rewards in the window, and they will be better than average by that point. So, I'm not guaranteeing you'll see a hit under then. I'm sure many people won't do. In fact, most people won't do, but you never know.
I instantly saw the potential here for some sort of infinite loops. I'm wondering if you've counteracted that. The ritual vessels apply the captured monsters to all ritual sites in a new map. If you use a ritual vessel on the new map that is already enhanced, do you capture more and then can take that to the next map and then ad infinitum?
We thought of that one. You can only use ritual vessels if you haven't used any on the map that you're playing. So it has to be on a vanilla ritual site.
Okay, so it's kind of like a one-on-one off sort of deal.
Voy a ver los rituals
Which honestly isn't a problem. It'll be.
Oh, hicieron uno de $30. Oh, hicieron los supporter packs así, más chingones.
You're thinking of everything. All right.
That's one of the advantages of having the extra month, right?
es
Our goal was to
pusieron
release this in
el PET
December, and we've
a
taken extra
30
time to actually, QA stuff as thoroughly as we can do, and to think of these things,
y la
put time into
armadura
balancing it and making it good, and
a
making a good
60.
announcement stream.
Está
And,
chingona.
it's been really helpful.
Y
Yeah,
el
yeah.
portal
You had
a
an extra
30.
month or two, roughly.
Yeah, 1 month, of
La
extra time.
armadura.
And sure, I mean, there's still things being tweaked, right? Like, people were away over, Christmas and New Year during that time, and not everything was
Carácter.
finished at exactly the point we wanted to a month ago, but it's certainly very smooth sailing through that period while
Y
we're
los
working on
nuevos
3.14 at the same time as putting finishing touches
También
and testing on
chingones.
3.13. Like, I believe that we have
Bell
a
support.
99% functional alpha build being deployed today for the alpha testers to start giving us a week of feedback on. And
Harvest.
I know it sounds crazy for us to be making a big deal about alpha testers
Está
having a
bien
week to
chingón,
test it,
pero no
but
tengo este
normally we're
dinero.
like, we're launching tomorrow. It's not done. The league's turned off. The bosses are turned off. Go. And there's nothing to test apart from does it crash. But now we actually have every single thing is there kind of situation for alpha. Though it's worth noting while I'm talking about alpha, because there's various competitions and that kind of stuff being arranged for league launch, and obviously alpha testers would have an advantage. One of the rules that we're putting in place is if you've played on
Portal
alpha for a
también.
given
Está
expansion,
bonito.
you're not eligible to receive prizes. And so that's a big decision that alpha testers are going to have to make, where if they're actually like a top tier streamer who wants to compete, they probably shouldn't be signing up for the thing that gets them a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
So if you've had a chance to pre-play the content, you won't be able to win prizes. You can still compete, but people will know you're an alpha tester and you don't actually get anything for winning. And so that's our attempt at making sure that with a properly functional alpha testing program, we have a degree of fairness in there.
That's really surprising and awesome to hear. Because I feel like this has always been like a little thing in the background that's never really been fully acknowledged. That's really awesome to hear.
And I want to emphasize, because I can already see my email box blowing up, please do not email me or other staff members asking for alpha access. It doesn't work that way. Like, we literally have a policy of if you ask, you're not getting it, kind of, right? So we have ways of selecting people. As the program continues to function better, we will add more people, but we'll do it in a fair way that gives people a chance to apply, or we'll select them based on their merits. And the best way to become an alpha tester is provide consistent bug report feedback on the main site. We invite people by looking at who is just giving us great feedback and putting time in. Alpha testing is not a prestige thing. It's something which is almost like an unpaid job, And thank you to the alpha testers for their feedback and unpaid work there.
Good stuff. Just a couple more questions before we move on to some questions from the chat. With the rework to the harvest system, removing the gardening side of things, how will the Ashabi quest and fight happen, or has she retired?
So you'll randomly encounter a Ashabi relatively rarely. So you'll stumble in there expecting to get choices of crafting options, and there's the tree ready to go with the Ashabi fight.
Ah, okay. So it's just kind of a random spawn thing now.
Infrequently, yes.
Okay. In
we
heist,
rebalanced her rewards and stuff, of course, to compensate for this.
Ah, gotcha. So to heist now, the meta for getting the most value out of the system really became centered around the duplication of extremely valuable blueprints and running them infinitely for massive amounts of currency. Is anything happening that will affect this?
So I want to clarify that when Ziggy says duplication, he means through legitimate game mechanics. There are a couple of ways of copying the blueprints. And so, this is not an exploit-filled game if anyone is watching and worried about it. But yeah, no, it's totally fine. There are mechanics that let you split the blueprints, where the problem with that wasn't so much that the base blueprint was a good one that was being split, because there was a cost to splitting it. It was the fact you could fully reveal every single aspect of it, and then that would just carry on to the copied copy. And so the first change we're making here is that the split copies do not have any reveals. They're basically like the rewards are the same, but they're entirely unrevealed again. And so you can continue exactly the same strategy if you have enough reveals for every single copy and enough markers to achieve that. And that's quite a big cost. That makes it significantly less economically insane to do it, but it still makes it good to do it. Like, it still means that if you put the effort into finding the perfect blueprint, having the master copy, going and putting effort into getting the ingredients you need to be able to split it, like the fossils or the beasts and stuff, you can still profit from this, but it's not quite as crazy. In addition, there's significant rebalance that went into the rewards, especially around those top tier blueprints. So the currency one is less insane, for example, and we're pretty happy with where this is. And when the community finds something awesome and profitable like that, we don't want to just turn it off. We want to find a place where it now has a good, good location in the game to exist. And so we're more happy with this from a balance point of view. We think that it will still be potentially a good strategy for some players to do, but it won't be a ridiculous strategy.
Heist y Harvest a la nueva liga. Porque hay nuevas cosas como las mecánicas de plantar las madres en Harvest. Ya no lo van a tener, lo duplicar. Algunas cosas en Heist ya no lo va a poder tener tampoco.
I believe so. I'm just going to double check this with
Y
my guys. That's true, right?
los doble voces, los voces.
Okay. Yeah, so most mechanics appear on a few regions, but yes, it is true that if you want to do Beyond on, say, Glennet Cairns or whatever, if it's not there, then you do not have the ability to specialize Beyond in that region. And so the experiment we're trying here is allowing people to specialize on certain areas of the atlas. It's not a global thing where you're just juicing your entire atlas at once. You will have to find maps in that region. Of course, this can change over time. Give us feedback as you play. We think it's actually quite fun this way. It's certainly a more advanced way of doing it than what we could have done at face value, but we try to do it the interesting way rather than just say broadly a whole atlas is juiced.
Entonces, verdaderamente hacer
Yeah,
la
I mean, there's something to be said for
especialización y
things not
cambiar
being
tu
fully
especialización
homogenized,
del
not all
Atlas,
being the same,
dependando,
provides like interesting strategies and
depende
stuff
de
that comes out of that. So
lo que
it's
quieres
good
hacer,
to see
¿no?
that. I
Como
imagine this also gives
Legión,
you another like
Breach,
lever that you can change in the future to
¿qué había
shake up the
otros?
atlas instead of just moving maps
Delve,
around. You can move what
El
regions
Templo,
have what things, which could
Inquisition.
unlock new strategies.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be really
Una
interesting to
madre
see
así.
how it pans out based on people's actual activity when they play it.
All right. Arta Eva asks, as this league is boss driven, will there be any rebalance of XP
Entonces,
or
lo que
drops
están
for boss
haciendo con esta
encounters,
liga es
as
más
it will
el
take
hecho de
way more time for such encounters like
poder
the
echar
enhanced bosses, for example?
las viejas
Do you guys have any
mecánicas un poquito
We haven't put any
más,
work into changing the experience and drops
más
for those
que lo que
bosses,
te
though
gusta,
we
haz lo
are
que te gusta,
careful to
pues
make
para
sure
poder
that
jugar más
they're in a
como,
good place.
como
You know, if we saw any problems, we would
más
fix it,
sobre
but
las
we
cosas
haven't
que
deemed
te
there to be
gustan en
any
el juego
issues
y
there.
jugar con eso. En lugar de estar solamente jugando siempre a los mapas y haciendo cosas
Yeah, the
que
team building is going to
posiblemente
take a lot longer. Most people
encuentras
get
más
their boss fights
aburrido
done relatively
porque,
quickly.
bueno, a veces los mapas, ¿no?
All
Como
right.
son. Es
Vice
repetitivo.
versa,
Entonces,
951 asks,
para
can the
gente
Maven
que no
witness
juega
unique map
seguido,
bosses?
pues puede
If
ser
so,
bien
can their
diferente, bien,
boss-specific
bien,
loot drop in the
no
boss
es
rush?
accesible.
No, you can't witness unique map bosses. That's something we certainly discussed and tried to achieve, but there are significant logistical issues on that one, so that's a thing for later.
Yeah, I imagine there'd be some pretty insane ones. Like some of those bosses have immunity during certain periods and stuff. You have
Unique
to move them
mapas.
around the map
Crafting.
and stuff. So yeah. Knockcake's got two questions. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So,
That's a
wait,
repeat of the other
that is
question.
a repeated question. Oops, never mind. Casually Stoned asks, what order of rarity are we talking about with the new
Casually
influenced
Stoned.
Maven orb? Something like Influence Exalt? Mirrors?
They're estimating around the Awakener's Orb level. You know, we certainly want it to be
Entonces
pretty
quieren
punchy.
saber qué es
Makes sense since it's,
la
I imagine, a
potencia
drop
de
from
las
Earthbound.
nuevas currency.
That's a good assumption to make.
Como de Maven.
That's a very clever non-answer there, Chris.
Ahorita esto
Yeah,
lo
oh no,
es,
it's only
es
sense that
como
it's an
un
act
poquito
one.
como el Sector. Como el Death
Okay.
tipo. No, ¿cómo dijo?
Sylthia asks, do we get skill points for each of the 8 Atlas skill trees, or do we just get 2 points and have to choose which tree to allocate in?
It's all on a per region basis. So you can completely max out a single region potentially before you touch the other ones if you choose to. And so to specifically answer the question, as you do the multi-boss fights in a given region, you get points for that particular region's trees.
Taking my own question on there, roughly where does this line up? Is this like Awaken at 8, we're likely to have all the skill points unlocked, or is it significantly longer than that in terms of a tail of content?
How do you guys feel about that?
All of them in all regions is probably Awaken at 8, but to get all points in one region could be.
Okay, yeah, so they clarify that Awaken at 8 is about a good estimate for all regions, all trees, but to get all the points in a single region could be a fair while before that.
Okay, so that's like a longer tail thing that you can focus on, like unlocking. It's like you're
Antes de llegar.
settling into
Antes de llegar, como
unlock your longer term
prepararte.
strategies kind of thing.
Yeah, and it honestly depends on what you're prioritizing, right? Like you're going to prioritize the regions with the things you want to be playing, and so you'll probably get those significantly
Exacto, vas a
further ahead than the ones where you're
priorizar
just doing it because you
las
might occasionally
regiones
play a map in
y
that region and you don't
los
really
tipos
care
de
about those
mapas que
mechanics.
quieres jugar. Entonces
Right.
vas a ir
Same
más
old
a,
asks, a rather interesting question. Can you drop
más a
craftable
Legión,
watchstones
más a
before you
Breach,
get all
como
the
decía
normal
ahorita.
watchstones?
A mí me
thus
encantó
amplifying your
mucho el
progression and
Harvest,
speeding up?
entonces voy a hacer
The
mucho
craftable
Harvest.
ones are super end game rewards. Can you guys clarify? Yeah, you technically can. I mean, you may not have all of your 32 watchstones by the time that you start to get craftable ones. But yeah, the craftable ones are meant to be mostly coming after the normal ones.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, and you can also trade for them, right? Like you could earn a
Yeah.
bunch of currency doing something else and then fill up your atlas that way if that you feel is the best plan.
All right. Zen21 asks, does the tier of the map bosses affect the captured boss, like how watchstones alter tiers of maps in retros? This in reference to Ritual. In Ritual.
I'm failing to parse this question mentally.
So if you capture a boss and mobs in like tier 10, does that affect if you apply it to like a tier 5 map? Does that make them really dangerous, or does it scale
Right.
to the map that you apply it to? I guess.
Good question.
Inherits area level of the map.
Right. It inherits the area level of the map that you captured it in.
Oh, okay. So pay attention to that then if you like trade for them.
Oh shit.
With respect to the Maven.
Yes. So that's with respect. Right. So with respect to ritual, it
Entonces
inherits
puedes hacer
the
una
level of the one you
combinación
captured.
con
And with
los
regard to the
boss de
Maven,
cada
it has a
mapa.
fixed level per
Y
encounter.
si no tienes
gotcha.
So
cuidado,
you're saying that the
pues
3, 4,
depende
5,
de
and
qué
so
tenía
on
el
are
mapa,
fixed. Yeah, okay.
pues puede afectar el otro.
Yeah. So when you're fighting 10 bosses at the same time, they're going to be tier 16 equivalently scaled ones, regardless of whether it was a low tier map that you captured it in.
Okay.
Oh, and yeah, you have to capture them in high tier maps in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of border cases that I don't get exposed to when working on this, that the guys who are physically setting them actually understand.
Yeah, I'll mention if you guys have like pretty technical questions, a lot of that stuff is really often answered in the kind of FAQ that's released a little bit closer to launch as well.
Yeah, Bex is looking into how much community confusion there is and will release an FAQ if necessary. It's partly that we're hoping that this Q&A helps solve most of the stuff because it's a good opportunity to clarify things and explain it in plain English and so on. But, you know, there'll probably be fine details we need to clarify afterwards.
I thought this was a good idea just because my first like feeling after watching the video that I was just like super overwhelmed.
I
And
love
it was hard to
contestar.
like process everything just because of the sheer amount of info in that like 30-minute reveal. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty good idea for that. Hopefully people are kind of like settling into it.
Should we have slowed it down and like spread it out over an hour and just be chill about it as we go? Or is it good to have that pace of content?
I think it's great for people to be like overwhelmed and freaking out and their heads exploding. They have like a week to get used to it all and figure it
Yeah.
all out on Reddit and everything. So
We
it's
didn't want
fine.
to waste people's time and there was a lot to cover, so we just got right into it.
Yeah, totally. And we have, you know, this downtime and then Bayclast afterwards to, you know, unwind a little bit and process. So it's
Fair
good. Snoozius asks, who gets the choice / drop in ritual when multiplayer game? Well, like when playing with friends.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is one of the leagues where it's the instance owner who gets to choose the rewards. And so
Okay.
you do not all get your own tribute. You do have to like work out what you're getting as a group and to share it. And it's usually based on implementation detail that we decide that. We ideally want rewards to be shared across the group where possible, but if it doesn't make sense for how we're actually structuring the league, then sometimes that's the outcome. And when doing it, we just make sure that there are enough rewards for playing as a group and you get the ability to share it out as you choose. If your group are bad at sharing, I would encourage you to take turns opening the maps so you each get the chance to be bad at sharing with your friends.
Wow. True though. Clemmy Clem asks, will there be sextant mods that affect the amount of ritual points you get whenever ritual mechanic spawns in the map?
Perdón, le estaba mandando un mensaje a mi hermano.
Yeah. If the sextants spawn packs and the packs spawn within the ritual site, then it absolutely does affect it. In terms of actually adding mods to sextants that affect rituals directly, that's something we would do if ritual goes core later, potentially. We have not confirmed or decided, have no idea whether it's going core. It depends a lot on what people say. They like it, don't like it, you know?
It's significant to know that
Vamos a
like
ver.
just enhancing the map.
Vamos a ver si
effectively will
está
add extra
va a
packs
estar
to the
bueno
ritual
porque el
site as well, and
último
that it's not
mucha gente
fully
se quejó
isolated.
cuando salió Heist.
It's Parsalien asks, are there always 3 rituals
Había
per
muchos
zone, or
bugs.
does the number of rituals
Había
per zone
muchos bugs
increase as you
al
progress through the
principio.
story, or does it
No,
change in other
no,
ways?
todas las mecánicas que
My
querían
understanding
sacar
is
al
it does get larger.
principio
Let me just
no
clarify with you guys.
las tuvieron que quitar porque no funcionaban. No
Yeah,
funcionaban
so it does
como...
scale very slightly. So the range of number of rituals
Como
you can
ahorita
get does
está,
get
ahorita
higher
está
as you get
mejor.
into higher tier areas.
Siempre
We
final,
do
al
want it to
final de
stay
la
simple
liga
at the
siempre
beginning
se
of the
pone
storyline,
mejor
so you're
porque
not
ya
having to do
como
like 6
arreglaron todos
ritual
los
fights on
problemas
the
que
coast
había
or something.
en
But
la liga
by the time you're
y
handling
cambiaron
red tier
muchas
maps, I'm
cosas,
sure you're getting quite a
entonces
lot.
viene a arreglar
It reminds me
las
of like a cross
mecánicas
between
de
like
los mapas, de
shrines and a
cómo
beyond.
funciona con los mapas.
Sorry,
Lo de
a
Heights
breach
es
kind
que
of encounter. So
te sacaba
having like
mucho
3 or something seems like a
de la
lot of
producción
extra
del
monsters
Atlas.
per zone.
Tenías que, como, estabas
What is
jugando
the
dos
range here? Is
diferentes
it like
ciudades,
3 to
dos
6,
diferentes
3 to
Atlas.
5?
What's the cap?
El de tus
Like 4 is the cap,
seguidores
right?
con el
Yeah, 4 is the cap.
Heist
Currently.
y
This is
el
the kind of thing
Atlas.
we're iterating on while doing our testing. You never know, the alpha
La gente
testers
es
might
lo
have
que
feedback.
no le gustó. No les gusta
You'll
mucho salirse
probably
y
find that
ir a
4 is a
matar otras
reasonable number
cosas de
when you try
otros
it out.
lados y no poder
Alright.
progresar en el
That does seem
mapa.
like a lot.
En el Atlas.
Berkjam asks, are there going to be
Ahorita
stash
es
tabs for Heist,
Echoes
Harvest,
of
and
the
Ritual?
Atlas, entonces es verdaderamente sobre el Atlas.
We do not have any new stash tabs at the moment. I don't think Ritual needs to have a stash tab. I mean,
Yeah,
You
what
get some vessels, but they're real rare, and you kind of use them as you get them.
I guess like one item doesn't really warrant a tab for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty clear about our policy for tabs now, where we've explained that if there's mandatory progression items, we'll provide free storage for them, and if there's optional reward style stuff that you would normally just store in regular tabs, then we may provide purchasable specialized storage for that for people that want it. And we're trying to find a sweet spot here where tabs aren't mandatory, but at the same time we can still fund development of the game.
I think we have a question from Amy here. What are your thoughts on support characters, for example, Autobots and stuff like that? And how would you like to move forwards with that archetype in the future?
Well, I think it's really important that players have a lot of different ways of playing, and it's even interesting to see within our team how many people like
Está
playing support characters,
chingando.
including very, very
Está,
senior members of the team, Mark.
está chingando. Está chingón que
So
haga
we
la
definitely want to make sure it's
Trinidad,
fully
el
supported. And I
tank, el
think
support,
that
el
because
daño.
the person who has the title of game director on Path of Exile plays support characters, you're probably likely to see stuff in the future. What he's planning,
Nice.
I honestly don't know. That's above my pay grade.
I feel like they
Above my
are
pay
generally
grade.
insanely strong, and
Él
it's
está
just
el más
like
alto
not
en la
that many people get
compañía.
into
Above
them
my
for it
pay
to be a
grade.
big problem. Whereas if like half the player base was playing support characters, it would be something you'd have to tone down.
Matt clarifies there's no bias whatsoever, but philosophically,
Va a haber
I see
algo para
Path of
los
Exile as a
support
game with many,
quiero
many ways to
decir.
play. If you want to sit and trade with people, just sit there flipping currency. That's a valid way to play. It generates currency. If you want to sit there working out the perfect heist, if you want to sit there, taking advantage of the new league content and trying to be the first person to work out how to get the best rewards, that is a valid way to play the game. And playing an aura character that doesn't kill monsters directly, also a great way to play the game. And I think that providing more avenues beyond just killing monsters helps with action RPGs quite a lot, because there are 1,000 ways to kill monsters already. It's good to add a few hundred other ways to play too.
Great stuff. Stale Humor asks, what is your favorite skill gem change? What skill gem are you looking forward to using and seeing used by the community?
There's this blankness when I realize I haven't actually gone through the patch notes yet myself. Mark and Andrew, do you have any favorite skill gem changes that you're aware of in this particular patch? Okay, what happened with Scorching Ray? Cast time got halved. Okay, so there's some excitement about Scorching Ray. They had a mandate basically, and not these particular developers, but the designers working on the skills had a mandate basically of buff as many skills in impactful ways as possible. And I think there are 40 existing ones, which is kind of an understated part of this expansion. There could have been a lot more attention put on that, but the goal is basically that no one knows what's best to play now. There's 19 sets of ascendancy changes, 40 skills buffed. It should mix the meta up a lot more than most
Todo
normal
es
expansion
posible.
releases do.
Depende de si la gente
Like,
le
I don't think
gusta
this
o
one will
no.
be solved quite so quickly.
All right. World Creator asks, bearing in mind we're going to have a huge Ascendancy rework, what about the Scion? What are your thoughts on Scion in general?
The Scion has been reworked as part of the expansion. So basically all 19 Ascendancy classes got attention, where we sat there and said, what are we doing with this tree? How are we changing it? 3 of them had quite large implementation-based sets of changes. The Inquisitor, Elementalist,
El
and
Scion
Deadeye
es
actually had
uno
some
que
serious amount of work, but the other ones at least had us going through
el que te dé
and
la gana,
reviewing
¿no?
each thing and changing stuff. And so the amount varies from class to class, but we made sure the Scion was included. I personally am generally relatively happy with her place, and this is partly because if we make her too powerful, she jumps right ahead quite quickly, and so it's in a pretty good place, but we don't want her to lag behind.
Jard Extreme wants to know if you're going to implement the trade website as an in-game thing.
Por favor.
I don't see harm in doing this, and I kind of do think that it would be a positive thing to have the ability to embed a browser in the game so that you can directly link stuff, you can click on people's names to automatically whisper them. It's not at all against our philosophy with trade, right? Like, we're not against making things easier from a convenience point of view. It's more about the fundamentals of how trade works that we have a bit of philosophical views on. Having said that, there are interesting issues with getting it working in game to do with embedding browsers and the right middleware for that and various issues, and we just haven't got to that yet.
Es bien pesado para un juego.
It's fascinating how complicated development gets when you're targeting multiple platforms and consoles, and like let's say hypothetically you pick some middleware to embed websites in your game, and then that middleware may not work on like M1 ARM processor Macs, for example, and then our Mac users get upset at that, or it just requires a bit of work to get that kind of stuff going, and in the meantime people can alt tab.
All right, good stuff.
Command key tab or whatever.
Is there any like thing you really want to point out to people, like your favorite?
Me dio risa que dijo, well, people can alt tab.
Combed over this a few times.
A ver
now.
cómo el
Anything
chat
that really stood out, you really want to mention to people? What was your favorite?
It's actually pretty
Damn.
difficult to pick what the
All
favorite is here
damage.
because, I mean,
Remove
the
me
League
only.
itself was one of the best combat-focused ones we've done for a while. It's just
Any
a
all-
pure risk versus reward kind of thing. The player chooses how deep they want to go with the rituals, and in the end game, they can choose how deep they want to stack the amount of monsters. And the tribute is literally costing on various items from throughout Path of Exile's history and some new ones. And the deferral system makes some very, very interesting choices there because you'll see really expensive stuff, and putting it on lay-by over time kind of makes it cost more over time, but you do actually get to afford it even if you can't today. And so that will be an interesting experiment. So the League itself obviously wants a big expansion to go with it, but is probably going to be one of the more, condensed fun ones that we've done for quite some time. Very true Path of Exile. The expansion just adds so much to the end game, and honestly, like my amount of late end game Path of Exile play recently has been relatively low, so I don't even
Entonces,
understand the
yo creo que
depth
están
of the
haciendo
expansion. Every time we're
conclusión, más o
discussing it
menos.
in the team, I
Entonces, de
realize that it's way
conclusión,
more than I thought it
va a haber
was,
un
and that's going to be
nuevo
exciting. So
Atlas, un
I'm
nuevo sistema
expecting
como
that
el
to have
Atlas.
quite a long impact on the end
19
game
for
van a
some
cambiar
time.
las 19
And then one thing I wanted to really make sure with this
hacendades,
expansion was that the amount of metagame
ascendesis,
mix up, as we were
las
just
van
talking, was
a
quite high. We
cambiar,
really
las
didn't
van
want it to
a
be that there's a
mejorar
league and there's an expansion, but you're
todas.
playing the same build you were playing last league.
Y,
And so I think that the
y
unsung
muchos
hero of it is
skills
going to
van
be
a
the
cambiar.
fact that there's a lot of new
2
viable
nuevos
builds and
skills,
craziness that's
7
going to be
nuevos
happening there.
mapas. Yep.
Awesome stuff. Also, you made golems respawn. Just wanted to point that out. That's awesome.
Y
Yep.
golems respawn
And there
como
are
en
a
el
lot of
Elementalist.
ascendancies and a lot of region trees and a lot of other stuff that we get to reveal over the next week.
Y el árbol cambió
Fantastic
también. El
stuff. I'm
árbol
looking
hay
forward to it.
nuevas
Thank you so
cosas
much for
para el
the
Atlas.
Q&A, Chris. We're going to take
You're
a short break around the
A
live
ver,
stream and then continue our
la
debate
Liga
fast
de
for a short
Larves.
bit.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Heist que va a
Thank you
regresar.
very much.
Viejas cosas que van a regresar en fuerza. Chingón. 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 Buen stream. Buen stream. Tuvimos buenas informaciones. Ya tengo ganas de jugar. ¿Dónde está mi Path of Exile? Debo editarlo. Claro, ¿no? Voy a ir a buscar mis madres. POE, Path of Exile. Ya. Ese sonido está arreglado. Lo arreglé para Path of Exile. No funcionaba. Ah, no. Ah, este lo tengo que seleccionar. Ok. Lagen. Chanteok. A ver, vamos a ver lo que me dieron. Esto me dieron en Navidad. Me dieron la capa. Está bien bonita. ¿Qué? Ahora me dieron... ¿No me dieron nada? ¿Se va a tardar? A ver, quiero ver. Quiero ver algo. ¿Dónde chequeé eso? Props. Ya está linkeado. Ah, solamente que no me lo han mandado. No me lo han mandado. No me mandaron las alas. Cabrones. Parece que estaba haciendo este mapa, ¿no? Oh. Especial, ¿qué es un especial? Están todas estas madres. Luego, new. ¿A dónde está el support? Bundles. No. Rabbit attack. Rabbit attack. Border pack. Este portal está chingón. Bueno, sobre eso, yo voy a parar aquí. Me voy a descansar por el día. Fue un día tranquilo, viendo el reveal de Path of Exile. Creo que voy a jugar un poquito. Me dan ganas. Me dan ganas. Chingo de madre. Es lo que hago yo. Bueno, los dejo aquí. Y yo creo que voy a jugar un poquito. Y pues nos vemos mañana. Voy a descansar hoy, todo el día. Después de esto. Y pues nos vemos mañana. Tranquilos. Regreso mañana con más energía. Y listo para darle el día. Muchas gracias por el día. Muchas gracias a la gente que pasó. A fin de cuentas no me dieron la madre que estaba buscando. Las alas. Vamos a ver por más al rato. Al menos tengo la notificación que lo recibí. Bueno, los dejo. Cuídense. Los quiero mucho. Bye.